Hey everyone, welcome back to my next part of my Shimmering Skies review. We are now on Ruby. First card we're going to look at is this Taffeta Mutton Fudge. It's a 2-cost inkable 2/2 that quests for 2. We've seen this stat line before. C, again, it could be fine, but nothing too crazy with it. Next card is Wreck-It Ralph, a 3-cost inkable 1/4 that quests for 1. That says, whenever you ready this character, gain 1 lore for each 1 damage on him. So the dream with this card would be to have 3 damage on him and to find ways to ready him and just gain lore and kind of combo off. I think it's a fun card, definitely something that people will want to build around. Don't think it's quite yet there to be a viable competitive card. Maximus, it's a 6-cost inkable 3/5 that quests for 2. At the end of your turn, if you have any characters in play with 5 strength or more, you gain 2 lore. If you have any in play with 10 strength or more, gain 5 lore instead. So, last set we saw something similar with Flynn Rider, just more that cared about having more strength than your opponent. And that would happen at the beginning of your turn. This happens at the end of your turn, so you'd be able to try to set up a board and get an effect right away from it. Ideally, you want to have something with 10 strength on there, and how difficult that's going to be, I don't know yet. So there is a Gaston that we're going to talk about a little bit later that has 10 strength, but other than that, you probably need to be pumping up your characters. If that makes support more viable, where you can quest and then bump up one of your characters, things like just strength boosters in general. Again, I think it's a really fun card. I think it has the potential to see play. I don't know if it's too narrow to make it in a bunch of competitive decks, but I think it's a fun build around. And with the success of Flynn last set, now that might just be because he was a 2-drop and you could really punish the control decks. Other than that, he was kind of a dead card in hand. But again, the fact that you can control when this happens and it's inkable, I'm going to put it in B. I think that it kind of fits in with what Ruby wants to be doing, and I just like the card. Next is Turbo, a 2-cost uninkable 2/3 with Rush that cares. This character can also count as being named King Candy for Shift. So looking at Sapphire, we do have a King Candy card that can shift on. Really, I think it's just more flavorful than anything. I'm going to put this in D. I unfortunately don't think a 2/3 with Rush is too worth it on 3. You'd probably rather just play the Queen of Hearts and have it inkable. Because at that turn of Rush, all you care about is having enough attack to take out a character than necessarily like living a 2-cost attack. Our first legendary here is Donald Duck Pie Slinger, 5-cost inkable 3/6. You can shift it for 4. It normally quests for 1. And when you play this character, if you shift to play him, each opponent loses 2 lore. While an opponent has 10 or more lore, this character gains +6 attack. So the idea here would be to try to shift him, but really later on in the game, will be a 9/6. So like we were just talking about with the Maximus, I think that this card could help set that up a little bit more. It could be working towards the payoff of it. A 9/6 character on its own, I don't think really does too much. It's not a card game where the attack can also win you the game faster. Like you can probably get rid of, or it'll be good for getting rid of Queen's Castles. It might be good for getting rid of other like locations and trading off like with a Tamatoa or something like that. But the 9/6 isn't as impactful as something that gains for a lot of lore. So even though I think that this kind of makes Maximus a little bit more viable, I'm just going to put it in C because in a vacuum on its own, I don't think it does as much to help you win the game as something like the Maximus does. But again, could be a part of a bigger strategy. Next is a Rancis Fluggerbutter, 4-cost inkable 4/4 that quests for 1. If you know my videos, this is a D. Nothing exciting. Scar Betrayer, it's a 5-cost inkable 6/3 that quests for 2. When you play this character, you may banish chosen character name Mufasa. So very flavorful. What would this need to be playable? Mufasa would need to be rampant and hard to deal with. We do have a new Mufasa coming out in Sapphire that we're going to look at after this review. Whether or not it's good enough to warrant playing this card, probably not. Right now, I'm going to leave it in D. I think that you would really need it to do Mufasa, and right now the biggest Mufasa kind of wants to be banished because then you get something off the top. So if this other Sapphire Mufasa turns into a meta staple, I don't think it will right yet, but then potentially this card sees play, but it's just a little too narrow where it only gets rid of one named character. A 3-cost uninkable Snowana Rainbow, 2/4 with Rush that quests for 1. Similar to Turbo, this is a D. I think you'd much rather play the like Rafiki or the Hercules and Ruby. Daisy Duck, a 2/2 evasive, cost 2, inkable, quest for 1. The only thing I could see with this is Diablo Tech. It does die to anything that would deal with Diablo. We saw the idea of maybe playing like the Pegasus 3/1 with evasive on 2, and just the fact that died to a strong gust of wind. This one has a little bit more, but it still dies to the big things of let the storm rage on, or strength of a raging fire if they have that out. So unfortunately, I'm going to put it in D because I just don't think it does enough. Mickey Mouse, a 4-cost inkable 2/4 that quests for 2, and while you have a character named Minnie Mouse in play, this character gets +2. So the idea here is to try to play a Mickey Minnie deck, and it's conditional, but it's a 4/4 that quests for 2, and it's an inkable card. Again, I think it's a nice flavor card, like Mickey and Minnie love each other, but whether or not it's going to be in competitive decks, I don't think so. Next is Ratigan Raging Rat, a 3-cost inkable 1/5 that quests for 1. And while this character has damage on it, he gets +2 strength. Again, strength I don't think is as important as something like lore. Like if it gave you a little bit more lore, maybe like we saw in some other Donald Ducks, but if not, getting a 3/4 for 3, no, I don't think that's quite where it needs to be. And with no way of like activating its own damage, I think it's a little too narrow. Next, a Taffeta Mutton Fudge, a 1-cost inkable 1/2 that quests for 1. And when you play this character, if you have a location in play, each opponent loses 1 lore. So ideally, this is not a 1-drop, right? You don't want to play this on turn 1 because you don't have a location to really get the full effect of it. Therefore, I think it's in D. I don't think that it's a strong enough payoff to put into a location deck at the moment. Next is Denahi, Avenging Brother. It's a 5-cost uninkable 7/5 that quests for 2. I think this is just D. We started seeing at the end of the format that like Amber, Ruby, Mufasas wanted to play Nessus, which is, I believe, this card, but on a 6-cost inkable body. Again, the inkability is huge, so for just a vanilla card that's uninkable, I don't think it's going to see much play. But the idea was that it took out a Queen's Castle in one shot. Again, because this is uninkable, I don't think it has quite the chance that Nessus did. Next, we have a Pete, 7-cost inkable 6/6 that quests for 2. And when you play this character, if you have another character named Pete in play, you may banish chosen opposing character. So with this, I think we start to see the ideas of a Pete typal deck coming in. And this is definitely a really good payoff for that. But there's nowhere near the support to try to make this competitively viable, and just to kind of slot it in a deck, you're not getting the reason you're playing it would be the being able to just banish opposing character right off the bat. Next is a Taffeta Mutton Fudge, 4-cost inkable 3/3 that quests for 1. It's shift 2, and it says once per turn when this character moves to a location, you gain 2 lore. I like this card. I don't think it's going to be very viable and competitive decks, but we'll look at a location a little bit later that allows you to move there for free, and then you can move to other locations. So I think the idea of that deck is super cool, and I definitely want to mess around with the idea of building it. But again, we're looking at all of this through a competitive lens, and unfortunately, that's not going to make the cut. Robin Hood Sharpshooter, our second legendary of the set, 4 cost, uninkable, 1/4 that quests for 2. With the ability, whenever this character quests, look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may reveal an action card with cost 6 or less and play it for free. Put the rest into your discard. I think that it's a cool effect, but the fact that you have to wait until it quests and the 1 strength means it dies to almost every single form of ruby removal, and with the 4 health it dies to Along Came Zeus. I think that the likelihood of being able to get this effect seems pretty narrow. Again, I think that there's definitely going to be people that want to include it. Whether or not some of the Robin Hood cards that we saw from Emerald, like if you do a Emerald Ruby Robin Hood deck, you put it in Sherwood Forest, and it's at least protected from that way. But I think that unfortunately it's just a little too conditional for the effect, and not the effect isn't strong, but it's not worth the risk. Especially again being uninkable, there's not as much room for that anymore. Gaston, Pure Paragon, a 9 cost, uninkable, 10/6 that quests for 2. And for each damage character you have in play, you pay 2 less to play this character, and it has Rush. So I think the Rush is definitely interesting. And for something like this, I think that this can slot in well right away to a Amber Ruby Mufasa that is already playing the Mother Gothels, that's already playing the Mulans, that maybe you start putting in like Teeth and Ambitions, you put in Hydras and things like that. So I'm going to put this up at B. I think that this, I'm going to put above Maximus just because I can see it in a vacuum being a little bit better, where, this works well with a Maximus because if you can get this down, already have a Maximus down, get this down for a little bit less, set up your board, you can gain 5 lore right away. And I think that that's a fun idea to work towards, and excited to see if anything does come of it. Next is a Pete, 3 cost, inkable, 4/3 that quests for 1. This is a D, again, vanilla card. Don't think the stats matter at all. Next is Arthur Novice Sparrow, a 2/3 reckless. It's a 1 cost, uninkable. I think that this is another card that's in D. Donald Duck Daisy's Date, 3 cost, inkable, 2/4 that quests for 1. And whenever this character challenges another character, each opponent loses 1 lore. So, couple key things here. It's whenever this character challenges another character, doesn't have to banish it, just has to challenge it, and then you're losing lore. So it kind of reminds me of the Shere Khan, which is one of my favorite cards in Lorcana. It's not the best card, but it's one of my favorite. And this just seems like a worse version of that. Like, it has a little bit more health, but the Shere Khan, you're gaining lore, so rather than just stopping your opponent from winning, you're actively working towards winning yourself. And this is only when this character challenges, where the Shere Khan is for other characters. Now, if we start getting payoffs, I'm going to put it in D. If we start getting payoffs for, like, when your opponent loses lore, you gain lore, there's a chance that this could start to see play. But for right now, in the state of the game, unfortunately, I don't think that it's quite there yet. Radigan Party Crasher, 7 cost, uninkable, 5/5 that quests for 3. It has Shift 4, it has Evasive, and all of your damage characters get +2 strength. I'll put it in C. I think it might just be something fun to add to decks. I have a hard time seeing the extra 2 strength being super important. Whether or not you might play this in something like the Maximus deck just to make it a little bit easier, but there aren't too many things that have 8 strength, so using this on its own, it would have to be a multiple card combo. But again, for 4, getting a 5/5 evasive that quests for 3 seems pretty strong, and maybe you don't even care about the other effect. Are there any Radigans to shift onto? Maybe in Emerald? I'm going to leave it in C right now. Maybe in the right deck it could have a little bit more play, but leave it in C. I don't think it's going to be competitively viable. Vanellope von Schweetz, a 4-cost uninkable 3/3 rush. Gets evasive at the start of your turn and a quest for 2. I like this card. I think that, again, playing a lot of Ruby Amethyst, there was a lot of, we kind of went back and forth on the idea of should we play Peter Pan Shadow, which is pretty much this card, except it's a 2/3, and it has evasive all the time, and it gives all of your rush characters evasive. So it would give your Fox evasive, it would give your Maui's evasive. So a little bit more upside with that, but the fact that this has 3 attack I think is really crucial, and it can kill a Diablo at a cove. So I think that, again, it's a good tech card for some evasive hate, and it quests for 2, which is nice. So I'm going to put it in B. I think that it can see some play. A Simba, Adventurous Successor. A 1-cost uninkable 2/1 that quests for 1. And whenever you play this character, chosen character gets +2 strength this turn. So again, it's one of those cards that even though it costs 1, you do not want to play it on turn 1. The real effect is to give something +2 strength this turn. This gets better in a deck like Ruby Amethyst, where you can bounce it and return it to hand and to activate your Maximus. I'm going to put it in C. I don't think it quite makes B yet. I think it has to really be slotted into a specific deck that wants to do that, and whether I don't think that that card is, or that deck rather, is going to be particularly viable right off the bat. Minnie Mouse, Dazzling Dancer, 3-cost inkable 2/4 that quests for 1. And whenever this character or one of your characters named Mickey Mouse challenges another character, gain 1 lore. So that's interesting. Again, we were just talking about the Donald Duck. This is a really similar card, but it's gaining the lore. So in that instance, I think it's a little bit better. And it is also cares about Mickey Mouse. I'm going to still put this in D. Unfortunately, I think that the fact that it's just Minnie and Mickey's are narrow. But these are cards that are only going to get better the more Mickeys and Minnies we get. And, once we're a couple years into the game, there's definitely going to be people building some Mickey and Minnie typal decks. And, maybe that card gets slotted in there. Here we go to our actions. Break Free. Deal 1 damage to chosen characters of yours. They gain Rush and get +1 attack this turn. I think that this is really good. I'll put it in B. Again, it's going to be a little more situational. But we know that dealing 1 damage can actually be a benefit for some certain things. It can, like, if you play this before a turn that you're going to know you're going to play a Gaston, it's almost like this card is free because it's going to make the Gaston cost 1 less. You give something Rush, so the turn that you can play another card, have it quest in, and you can give it an extra attack. Maybe that helps get you closer to the Maximus thing. So I think that there's a lot of uses for this, and I think that will definitely see some play in the context of some of these competitive decks. Evil Comes Prepared, a 2-cost inkable ready. Chosen characters of yours, they can't quest for the rest of this turn. If a villain character is chosen, gain 1 lore. Would it be good enough to play in not a villain deck? We see, I don't think so. I'm going to put this in D. I was thinking, Shield of Virtue, but that's really played along with like Hiram to be able to grab you some additional cards if you don't need it. Not necessarily for the effect. We saw LeFou, but that's on a body. And I don't think the payoff of if it's a villain, gain 1 lore is enough to turn it in the favor. Don't Let the Frostbite Bite. It's a song, 7-cost, inkable. Ready all of your characters. They cannot quest for the rest of this turn. Unfortunately, I think that it's hard to see Mm, no, I'll probably put it in D. I'm trying to think of what the use for this would be. Just to double challenge into the board, to protect your characters, to have them sing. Like maybe it's in a, let's see, I know people were talking about Amber Ruby songs, so this might be one that you put in Amber Ruby songs just to try to sing and do all that kind of stuff. I think I'm being a little bit gracious with this, but looking at this tier list, it's a lot of lots of C's and D's, so I'm feeling a little bad for Ruby here. Glimmer versus Glimmer. Banish chosen characters of yours to banish another chosen character. It's a 4-cost, uninkable. Why would you want to play this over Dragonfire? So it costs 1 less, so that's a benefit. And maybe you would want to put it in a deck that cares about like one of your characters being banished. So like the Prince Eric from set 3, where when Prince Eric gets banished and you get to banish another character. So it's pretty much like you play this, you get rid of your Eric. From this card, you get to banish another character, and then you get to banish another character. Still ends up being kind of an even trade, right? But unfortunately, I have a hard time seeing this being good. I'll put it in C for like niche, like if you're playing small creatures or whatever, and you just want to do. I think removal is the floor for removal cards is a lot better than character cards, so just putting that in C because removal's removal. 3-cost inkable. Who's with me? Your characters get +2 strength this turn. Whenever one of your characters with reckless challenges another character, this turn gain 2 lore. So I think there's another C. I think people will want to build around this. Unfortunately, it's only on 1 turn. If it was something like an item and it happened all the time, and I think it could maybe see some way, but unfortunately, I think, again, it's a little bit too narrow, but giving Reckless a little bit more payoffs is kind of cool. Potion of Might, a 1-cost inkable item where you can pay 1 ink and banish this item, and chosen character gets +3 this turn. If a villain character is chosen, they get +4 instead. So this is, I'll put it in C as well. Again, another activator for Maximus. You can't put it on a Maui, or like you wouldn't be able to do this and then get Maui up to 10. You could do it on Scar. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of things that are boosting the strength, and Maximus being a payoff for that, where if you can get 5 lore on your turn, like that sounds pretty good on its own. But whether or not it's worth it to include all of these other things that have very little value to the board or furthering your game plan, I don't know. The Sword Released. It's a 3-cost uninkable item. At the start of your turn, if you have a character in play with more strength than each opposing character in play, each opponent loses 1 lore and you gain lore equal to the lore lost. So to me, this just seems like a multiplayer card, a lot better in multiplayer than it would be in one-on-one. I'm going to put it in D for the sake of 1v1 competitive. Ruby Chromicon, a 1-cost inkable item that says exert it, chosen character gets +1 strength this turn. I think something simple like this is one of the better activations we've seen. I'm going to put it up there with Break Free, because we know how important getting 1 extra strength could be for a turn, right? You put down a Maui, you do this, you can take out a castle all on its own. And there might be other cases where we want to boost something up to get Maximus or anything like that, but we've seen that be really important in other decks, so I think that there's no reason for it to not be the case this time around. It'll be interesting in general to see how, like last set, the Queen's Castle was just kind of running rampant, so it'll be interesting to see how it fares this set with a lot more boost to strength. Next we have our first of 2 locations, Sugar Rush Speedway, a 1-cost uninkable. It has 5 willpower and it costs 0 to move here. And once per turn, you may exert chosen character here, deal 1 damage to them, and move them to another location for free. When I saw this card, I really, really liked this card. because of how much I liked it, I kind of want to put it in B. I think that this honestly creates brand new archetypes where if you can get this down and have other locations like Fang or things like that, where it costs more to move there, but the reward is more, I think that this can see play. Again, it's not a card that you probably want to play on turn one. Maybe you do. And you can get some of the effects where characters move there. But I really like this card. I think it's one of the cards that I'm excited to sit and brew with. So again, I'll be a little more generous with it, putting it at B. But because I don't know if it will see competitive play like right away, but I think that it's a really fun card and probably one of the stronger build arounds of the new cards that we've seen. And last card in Ruby is Radigan's Party. It's a 2-cost inkable, 7 willpower, costs 1 to move here, and while you have a damaged character here, this location gets +2 willpower. +2 lore. So this reminds me a lot of Ariel's Grotto, where it was the same stat line, I think, and it said if you had 3 or more items here, this gains 2 lore. I think that this one, so you have to do it at the start of your turn if you have a damaged character. Right, you play Gothel on 2. You play this on 3, and then you do Rapunzel on 4. And I think it would be tough to keep it going. Like, you could probably do it turn by turn, but it might be worth it. I'm going to put this one in C here. Again, I think it's a fun card to maybe add into some brews, but won't make it to the competitive decks. I don't know, looking at it after it's all said and done, not a lot of Ruby cards I think are standing out, and we're not getting that much removal like we got with Brawl last set or anything like Medusa, so maybe a little bit disappointing in that sense, but there's always got to be one color, I guess. All right, thanks guys for checking this one out. Make sure to look out for our next color, Sapphire. See you.